Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. This is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ijoma Onyato.
Hello and welcome. Presidency insists no officer is above the law as presidential probe of EFCC acting chairman Ibrahim Magu continues. National Assembly seeks stiffer penalties for rapists as Senate passes bill on sexual harassment in tertiary institutions. Chief of Staff to Kwara State Governor Mr. Adisa Logun dies of COVID-19 complications at 73. And Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro tests positive for COVID-19, even as the US begins the formal process of withdrawing from the WHO. Plus, we'll have business, sports, news from Abuja, the FCT, and later on from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, House of Representatives to investigate alleged illegal withdrawal of $1.05 billion from the NLNG dividends account by the NNPC.
On sports news tonight, Rafael Nadal casts more doubt on prospect of defending his US Open title by confirming plans to play in the Madrid Open, which starts a day after the Grand Slam final.
And from Abuja, VR Advisory Services ask U.S. court to revoke summons granted to Nigeria requesting information on the company and its subsidiaries' acquisition of PNID stock.
EFCC acting chairman Ibrahim Magu may be hanging in the balance as there are conflicting reports about his status. The presidency today declared that the ongoing probe of the acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission is an affirmation that nobody under the present administration is above scrutiny. According to facts made available to State House correspondents by a source in the presidency, the interrogation of the anti-graft boss is to give him the opportunity to clear himself of weighty allegations. The source maintained that the investigation of the EFCC boss was to reinforce the Buhari administration's commitment to transparency and accountability. The presidency source affirmed that the holder of an elevated office, such as the chairman of the EFCC, must be above suspicion. There are strong indications that Mr. Magu's suspension may have been recommended by the panel probing allegations of gross misconduct against him. Meanwhile, the Senate President Ahmed Lawan has declared that all previous actions taken by the Ministry of Labour regarding the Special Public Works Programme are null and void. And this includes the setting up of selection committees in the states to pick the 774,000 low-skilled workers for the Public Works Programme. Our correspondent Linda Akigbe reports.
I apologize on behalf of the ministry for what took place at the last time. We deeply regret the incident that happened at the last visit, the altercations that followed it between the Minister of State and members of the Joint Committee.
Apologies from the Minister of Labour over an altercation between the Minister of State Labour, Festus Keyamo, and members of the National Assembly Joint Committee on Labour. An interactive session between Mr. Keyamo and the National Assembly Joint Committee on June 30th degenerated to a shouting match over the modalities for the execution of the federal government's Special Public Works Programme.
By design, by the constitutional...
The Senate President, in wading into the disagreement, insists the Ministry of Labour should only play a supervisory role in the execution of the programme, which is expected to see the employment of 774,000 low-skilled workers.
And I just pray that we continue to be on the same page, because on this, we are not going to allow the ministry headquarters to implement this program.
at all. All previous actions are null and void. We don't recognize them. From today, when you go to the committee room, please, you and your committee engage and start afresh, and we support you all the way.
We shall still go into the business of discussing the program. My Minister of State have put out a position of paper. That position paper is nothing sacrosanct there.
Members of a joint committee and the ministers of Labour assemble in another hearing room as directed by the Senate. The ministers are expected to brief them on how they will proceed with the program.
Go back, get your work plan, and report back to this whole house or this whole joint committee by Monday, 10 o'clock.
But the Minister of State Labour is sticking to his position on how the public works program should be implemented, just as the Director General of the NDE aligns with the stance of the National Assembly.
I am the chairman of the board of the NDE. Do you understand that? Yeah. The minister is the chairman of the board of the NDE. So when you say go back and bring a plan, you are still coming back to me. The directives of the National Assembly is not binding on me. This is a great constitutional issue that we go to the Attorney General at the end of the day for interpretation. Except, like I said, Mr. President says I should step aside and allow them hijack the process. Because the game, like you have seen today, is simply that they are conniving with a certain functionary of government to design the program, hijack the program against the wishes of Nigerians.
He is my supervising minister. His role is to supervise, not implement and execute. I'm telling you in confidence, I said it before and I'm now saying it. The 20-man state selection committee, I saw it in social media like some of you saw it, and as the chief executive of that agency. Is there justice in this? No.
The back and forth between the National Assembly and the Minister of State Labour, Mr. Festus Keyamo, appears to be far from over. Unfortunately, if both sides are unable to work together, the aim of the program will be defeated. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
Lawmakers in the House of Representatives are calling for special courts to try offences of rape and other sexual violence. Now, this was the resolution of the House following a matter of urgent public importance, who believes that the special courts will speed up the process of delivering justice. Meanwhile, a bill against sexual harassment in tertiary institutions has been passed in the Senate. Our correspondent Terry Ikumi reports.
The National Assembly is considering the best options to tackle the surge in rape and gender-based violence in the country. In the House of Representatives, a lawmaker canvasses for speedy trial of cases involving rape and gender-based violence.
If these cases are concluded within months or even weeks, with strong conviction to back up the conviction, it will have a massive effect on those who are nursing the intention to commit similar crimes. Special courts could be set up to fully harness the law and ensure accelerated hearings so that Nigerians will know that the laws will be applied quickly and fully. The delay in the trial has serious psychological impact on the victims and mostly the minors.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it.
Many victims of rape and gender-based violence in Nigeria have complained about the slow and difficult process of getting justice, and many believe this has further emboldened perpetrators, which could be responsible for the surge in recent times. Meanwhile, sexual harassment in Nigerian schools, especially tertiary institutions, has also been brought to the fore in recent times.
The ayes have it.
The Senate has passed a bill which criminalizes the act of neglect or failure of administrative heads of tertiary educational institutions to address complaints of sexual harassment within a specified period of time.
Create a strict liability offense by removing mutual consent as a defense in the prosecution of sexual harassment cases in tertiary educational institutions, and maintain and sustain the fiduciary relationship that exists between educators and students.
We're not trying to say that because of that special relationship between a lecturer and a student, it is difficult, almost impossible,
for a student to say no to a lecturer. Because when the student does that, it is either she succumbs, in which case she pays the price, or if she does not succumb, she may be in that institution for 7-8 years.
But some senators expressed reservations over certain sections in the bill.
As we are trying to protect the female students, we must be seen to be protecting some innocent lecturers. Some innocent lecturers. In these days of internet, a lecturer can easily be set up. We have to be very, very careful.
The lawmakers say the consideration of more viable options is because already existing laws do not seem to deter perpetrators, especially since some states have not domesticated these laws. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Kwara State has recorded a high-profile COVID-19 death, and he's the Chief of Staff to the Kwara State Governor, Mr. Adisa Logun. The 73-year-old Chief of Staff reportedly died in a health facility in Ilorin today after he was said to have been rushed to the hospital yesterday evening before he eventually died. The state government has declared a 7-day mourning period to honor Mr. Logun for his services in the state. The Christian Association of Nigeria is asking all state governments who are yet to reopen worship centers to do so, noting that the continued lockdown order on places of worship is no longer acceptable and justified. CAN's national president, Reverend Samson Ayokunle, said in a statement that despite the directive on reopening of churches, states like Lagos and Ogun are yet to allow reopening of worship centers. He questions the motive behind reopening markets, and yet churches are stopped. Benue authorities have recovered 14 more bodies from River Benue following last Sunday's boat mishap that claimed 26 lives. The victims, who were children and wards of mobile police personnel, were crossing from Agbo to a village where they also met their death as the boat capsized. 8 of them, there were 14 bodies. 8 were female and the rest were male. The rescue team say efforts are still on to recover more bodies. And the abducted chairman of the Nigeria Labour Congress in Delta State has been released by his abductors. He was abducted on Saturday night while driving out of his house in Ueli. Channels Television gathered that the Labour leader was released after undisclosed sums of money were paid as ransom. But the Commissioner of Police in the state, Mr. Hafiz Inwa, says he was not aware if any ransom was paid. He adds that his officers are still on the trail of the suspects with a view to apprehending them. In part 2, after the break, Ondo State House of Assembly begins impeachment moves against Deputy Governor Agbola Ajayi as he counters action with court order. That's in a moment. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Presidency insists no officer is above the law as presidential probe of EFCC acting chairman Ibrahim Magu continues. National Assembly seeks stiffer penalties for rapists as Senate passes bill on sexual harassment in tertiary institutions. Chief of Staff to Kwara State Governor Adisa Logun dies of COVID-19 complications at 73. And Brazilian president tests positive for COVID-19. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android, Fire TV, and Roku as well. To politics now in Ondo State, the frosty relationship between the Ondo State governor and his deputy has taken a new dimension. The State House of Assembly has served an impeachment notice on the deputy governor, Mr. Agbola Ajayi, over what they describe as alleged gross misconduct. 14 of the 26 members of the Assembly signed the impeachment notice, while 9 other lawmakers, led by the Deputy Speaker, Roju Ogundeji, backed out of the process. The motion for impeachment of the Deputy Governor was read on the floor of Assembly by the clerk. The Assembly Speaker thereafter explained that the Constitution empowers the Assembly to investigate the allegation and proceed on impeachment if necessary when the constitutional requirements have been met.
Receive a petition on gross misconduct against the Deputy Governor of Ondo State, Honorable Agbola Ajayi. And we are working on it. And for the few people of the pressmen that were in, because we have to observe the protocol of COVID-19, selected few media men were allowed in because of social distance and physical distancing because of this COVID-19. And you also what happened in the first process here was that 40 members signed a notice of impeachment. That is the first step. Those people ranting, they don't know the procedure. I can assure you that the appropriate time is a process, and the process is on and shall be concluded.
Meanwhile, some of the 9 lawmakers that pulled out of the impeachment process insist that the action is illegal.
My name is Honorable Festus Akibato, representing in the constituency. I'm a PDP member, but I can tell you that the impeachment letter is served because it is not complete 2/3. Once it is not 2/3, nothing shall be doing.
Meanwhile, the embattled Deputy Governor Agbola Ajayi says he's yet to be served with any impeachment notice, and he has gone ahead to file a suit before the Federal High Court Abuja, asking it to stop the State House of Assembly from impeaching him. Listed as defendants in the suit are the House of Assembly, the Inspector General of Police, the State Commissioner of Police, Department of State Services, and the Speaker of the State House of Assembly. In the suit, the Deputy Governor is asking for an order of perpetual injunction to stop the impeachment process and for the respondents to stay action. Staying in Ondo State, the immediate past secretary to the state government, Ifedayo Abegunde, who recently resigned his appointment, said he had to do so because he was stripped of all his responsibilities by Governor Rotimi Akeredolu. Mr. Abegunde says he was incapacitated by the non-performance of Governor Akeredolu's government, even though he still maintains a personal relationship with him, but has parted ways with him politically. Mr. Abegunde also denied, saying that the PDP won the 2016 governorship election in the state. Rather, he reiterated his loyalty to the APC in the state.
I have taken this decision to resign my appointment, having consulted widely among my people. The deteriorating welfare of the people of the state is of serious concern to me. It is public knowledge that my office was stripped of a lot of responsibilities for reasons best known to Mr. Governor. Despite this, I would have stayed on if the governor had united our party and pay attention to the welfare of our people. I have tried to use my office and my personal relationship to appeal to Mr. Governor to revive the human face of governance, but to no avail. How will I continue to serve under a government where the people, especially the great family of the progressive, have been shortchanged? I can only imagine the suffering of the people. Therefore, it is disheartening that I have been incapacitated by Mr. Governor as I could not do anything to salvage the situation.
Let's cross over to Abuja now, and here's Linda Akigbe. Linda?
Hello, Ijoma. Welcome to Abuja. Now, one of the shareholders in Process and Industrial Development, PNID, the company locked in a legal battle with Nigeria over a failed gas project, has asked an American court to revoke the summons served it to answer questions on the $9 billion compensation awarded PNID over the failed project. VR Advisory Services, an asset manager registered in Cayman Islands, is said to possess 25% stake in the capital of PNID and is trying to avoid being questioned by Nigeria's Attorney General and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami. Nigeria had on 14th May secured the right to summon VR and its subsidiaries to appear in court to provide documents concerning its acquisition of PNID stock. An arbitration court in London had awarded $9 billion to PNID as compensation for the failed contract to build the gas facility in Cross River State. But Nigeria is questioning the authenticity of the failed gas project, which it insists was a fraud organized with the collaboration of some past Nigerian government officials. In moving to stop the summons, VR Advisory Group held that Nigeria could make use of the American-Nigerian Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty and not ask the American judiciary for access to confidential information. The company is said to be run by London businessman Richard Dates and Americans Jeffrey Johnson and Ashok Raju, and are expected to reply to Malami's questions and supply the requisite documents. And back in Nigeria, the trial of alleged kidnap kingpin Hamisu Bala, popularly known as Wadume, and 6 others has been stalled following the absence of a trial judge, Justice Binta Murtala-Nyako. At the last sitting of the court, Justice Murtala-Nyako rejected the bail application of the defendants on the grounds that the court has granted accelerated trial. Justice Murtala-Nyako ordered the defendants to be moved from the custody of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad of the police to the Kuje Correctional Center in Abuja. The judge also ordered that the defendants must be availed access to medical facility and allowed to have access to their lawyers while at the correctional center. The defendants are standing trial for alleged kidnap for ransom, illegal gun running, and offences bordering on terrorism. The court has fixed Monday, the 13th of July, for continuation of the trial. The Federal High Court sitting in Benin City, the Edo State capital, has adjourned till July the 14th the suit by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, against the All Progressives Congress governorship candidate in Edo State, Mr. Osage Izeyamu, and 4 others. The EFCC is accusing them of misappropriating the 700 million naira campaign fund of the PDP during the 2016 governorship election in the state. Counsel to the first defendant, Charles Edosonwa, presented a medical report that Mr. Izeyamu had taken ill and therefore could not be present in court. The trial judge, Garba Mohammed, then adjourned sitting till 14th of July 2020. The other 4 defendants include a former Edo State Deputy Governor, Lucky Maswe, the immediate past chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Dan Obi, Tony Azegbemi, and Ife Erimumogai. And to politics. The People's Democratic Party has inaugurated its campaign council for the September 19th governorship election in Edo State. The council, which is headed by the governor of Rivers State, Mr. Nyesom Wike, and assisted by the governor of Zamfara State, has all the governors elected under the platform of the PDP as members. After the inauguration of the council at the PDP headquarters in Abuja, Governor Wike urged members of the party in Edo State to turn out en masse to vote for their candidate and also be ready to defend their votes, just as he alleges there are plans to compromise security agencies in order to intimidate voters on the day of the election. Away from politics, efforts to reduce infections among frontline health workers gets a boost as the Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas donates personal protective equipment worth about 30 million naira to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. ENPA representative Mr. Benjamin Anyanwu says the association hopes that the donations would help frontline health workers to be safe while caring for those with the virus.
The outbreak of COVID-19 in Nigeria about 5 months ago has no doubt exposed many frontline health workers to the dangers of being infected with the virus. According to the Nigeria Association of Resident Doctors, over 800 health workers have tested positive for COVID-19. 29 out of this figure are staff of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC. At the headquarters of the NCDC in Abuja, the nation's capital, efforts to protect these health workers got a boost as the Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas donated personal protective equipment to the NCDC.
As a physician myself and my colleagues in the United States, we understand why it's important to keep our physicians and nurses and other allied healthcare workers safe while we pursue this, what I would describe as war, and execute a plan to ensure that our people are safe and that we win this pandemic ultimately.
The items donated include 3,000 pieces of hand gloves, 1,000 pieces of N95 face masks, 2,500 pieces of KN95 face masks, 3,600 disposable water-resistant long-sleeve gowns, among other things.
This is just one example of the great support that we've received, and we're extremely grateful to our colleagues in the United States and in other countries in the Americas that have come together to rise to the challenge and support the work that we're doing.
What you see here is through personal donations from individual members of AMPA, Association of Nigerian Physicians in America, who were motivated to commit their own money, put it together under the leadership of our president, Dr. Shaman Emelife.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control is the lead agency of government that is responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as other infectious diseases in the country. These donations, no doubt, could not have come at a better time than now, when several health workers, including staff of the NCDC, are testing positive for the virus.
When the News at 10 returns, House of Representatives to investigate alleged illegal withdrawal of $1.05 billion from the NLNG dividends account. That's in business news. Join us again.
Welcome back to the News at 10. Indigents of Ondo communities in Warri's southwest local government area have staged a peaceful protest against alleged neglect and marginalization of their area by the federal government and the multinational oil companies operating in their domains. The protesters decried the abandonment of projects such as the Export Processing Zone and the Gas Revolution Industrial Park, among others, meant to positively impact on the lives of host communities and the nation at large.
Locally assembled sandbags used as protective buffer against the rampaging blast from the sea waves, tearing away and exposing the Ondo community in Warri's southwest local government area in Delta State. The call for a well-built shoreline protection, improved socio-economic well-being, cries about the continuous environmental degradation of the community despite multi-billion-dollar oil and gas installation has reached a crescendo, and these people can't take it anymore. As a predominantly riverine community, these people this time are protesting both on the waters and also on land.
The Shakiris have always abided by the laws of the land. We are being told to maintain peace, and we maintain peace. The social contract is not just working.
This oil is from our communities. And today you have seen with your eyes that we are suffering in abject poverty.
As the protest went on, a town hall meeting organized by the Movement for the Development of the Shakiri Oil and Gas Producing Community is also taking place in Ondo, where a 6-point demand is made to the federal government.
Chevron Nigeria Limited, Shell Petroleum Development Company, SPDC, and other IOCs working in our land, operating in our community as well. These companies surreptitiously employ non-indigenous and fly them to work in escravos and other Ichekiri offshore locations, while our eminent qualified graduates as well as technicians roam the street and continue to live at the mercy of their indigent and aging parents.
The points at the meeting is further emphasized by a prominent indigene of the community, Chief Ayiri Amami.
You know, the issue of marginal fees are coming up, and those that lay the golden egg are not benefiting from it.
Perhaps for the first time in a long while, the oil-bearing community of both the Shekiri and the Jaws of Baramatu Kingdom are singing from the same song sheet as regards a call for a better deal that will improve livelihood for the hen that lays the golden goose. The federal government needs to react to this brilliant shutdown of oil installation.
In response to Nigeria's quest for economic diversity and sustainable growth, one of the world's leading culinary product manufacturers, GB Foods, has established the second-largest tomato processing factory in Nigeria. The facility is a product of a partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Kebbi State Government, and the Emirates of Yauri. According to a statement by GB Foods, the 20 billion naira factory and industrial farm is located in Ngaski local government area of Yauri Emirates of Kebbi State and has the capacity to process over 4 billion fresh tomatoes into paste using technology and harnessing experience of over 40 years in the industry. For the rest of the business, here's Kayode Okikiolu.
Thank you, Gemma, and you're welcome to Business News. The House of Representatives has ordered an investigation into the alleged illegal withdrawal of $1.05 billion from the dividends account of the Nigerian liquefied natural gas by the management of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. Presenting the motion at plenary of the Green Chamber, the Minority Leader of the House, Honorable Ndudi Elumelu, says the alleged withdrawals were without the required consultations with state government and mandatory appropriation from the National Assembly. Meanwhile, the House Committee on Public Accounts has been asked to summon the management of the NNPC and NLNG for a thorough investigation on the matter and give its report in 4 weeks.
Aware that dividends from the LNG are supposed to be paid into the Consolidated Revenue Funds account of the federal government and to be shared among the 3 tiers of government. Worried that NNPC, who represent the government of Nigeria on the board of LNG, had unilaterally, without the required consultation with the state and mandatory appropriation from the National Assembly, illegally tampered with the funds of LNG dividend account to the tune of $1.05 billion.
And Africa is expected to partially rebound next year from a pandemic-induced economic slump, and that's according to the revised economic outlook on the continent, which was released today by the African Development Bank. In its latest report, the AFDB forecasts a lower 3.4% contraction in gross domestic product in 2020, and that's in contrast to the 3.9% growth projection by the Multilateral Finance Institution before the pandemic. The new report, which was originally published before the COVID-19 pandemic, indicates that Africa could still lose nearly $250 billion in economic output this year and 2021, while the rebound is threatened by risks including a potentially worsening pandemic, subdued commodity prices, volatile global financial conditions, and natural disasters such as locust infestations. Back here in the country, the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative says the federal government needs to implement clear policies to enhance the gas sector's contribution to the country's economy. In its policy brief released today, the NATI says Nigeria had consistently robbed itself by not fully developing her gas sector, which has the potential to create jobs through the gas value chain and to address her great challenges with electricity and industrialization. In the meantime, NATI is asking the government to fully deregulate the country's petroleum industry and create a single regulator for the downstream sector. Let's head over to the NSE, where nearly 38 billion is gained at the close of today's trading on the domestic stock market after a mixed performance as investors take advantage of the low price of some high-value stock. Ekaite Afia has details of today's trading.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. In what could be best described by traders as a dead cat bounce, the domestic stock market made a moderate rebound today after recording a string of losses in previous sessions. Now, this comes after investors renewed their interest for high-value equities such as Airtel Africa, Zenith Bank, and Bua Cement, which contributed largely to the more than 0.25% recovery in the all-share index. Needless to say, these stocks countered the impact of sell pressure from two market heavyweights, MTN Nigeria and Dangote Cement, which lost 0.86 and 0.79% each. Interestingly, sectoral performance of equities ended mixed. As you can see, the banking and industrial goods sector made some gains, while the insurance, consumer goods, as well as the oil and gas sector fell in the red due to profit taking. However, market breadth closed the day negative. Look at that. Okomu Oil in the lead of 18 losers, Red Star Express ahead of 16 other gainers, while GT Bank emerged as the major contributor to more than 155 million shares traded for the day. Well, that's the stock market report. I'm Ekaite Afia.
Well, thank you, Ekaite. On the other hand, it's mostly negative close for some of the world's leading stock markets, and investors react to some disappointing economic data. Let's take a look at the figures. That's business news for tonight. Thank you for watching. I am Kayode Okikulu. It's back to Ijoma on News at 10.
Thanks a lot, Coyote. The need to strengthen structures for peaceful conflict resolution on the African continent has been brought to the fore at the launch of the Joseph Adolo Okotebo Memorial Foundation. Organizers of the virtual event say they have chosen to honor their brother 1 year after his death, bearing in mind his love for peace and determination to settle conflicts locally and internationally, a trait they say he was well known for. Our correspondent Gimba Umar reports.
Thank you all for joining us.
The assemblage is for one purpose, the launch of the Peace and Conflict Resolution Memorial Foundation of Joseph Adolo Okotebo, the late politician, technocrat and statesman. A lecture is also being held in his honor. Concerns over conflicts across the continent has been bothersome, but not one that cannot be surmounted, according to the moderator.
The ultimate survival of humanity depended so much on the success of peace and conflict resolution, and that is why this gathering is extremely important.
Done with the introduction, Professor Anya Oanya delves into the theme of the day. For him, countermeasures that will involve denying terrorists the oxygen of publicity must commence.
The attitude of mind of the people to recognize that terrorism is an irritant and can never really win a battle. It helps to recreate confidence. And in the situation we are in Nigeria, it's clear that we need new strategies and approaches to dealing with the terrorism that afflicts our society.
The keynote speaker, Professor Bolaji Akiemi, outlines 3 ingredients he feels must be in place for a country to have a capacity to resolve any form of conflict: leadership, national power, and morality.
You've got to have a leader who is focused on international affairs or foreign policy, who is knowledgeable in them, who is prepared to be engaged. And if there are deficiencies in his own knowledge, then he has to surround himself with a national security system that will fill in the gaps in his knowledge.
Goodwill messages came in numbers from family, friends, and associates in honor of one of their own.
It is pertinent to remark that Adolo left a very promising career in civil aviation as a trained pilot to devote his life to the use of politics to correct the conflict-prone social order, which was in itself, as already noted, created by politics.
At the local level, where we had a conflict between the Shekiris and the Jaws, Sir Joe was indeed very instrumental.
Members of the Board of Trustees were inaugurated, including AVM Emmanuel Ombu, retired, as the chairman, Honorable Victor Oche, Tayo Yetibo San, Captain Cosby Otodo, and Mr. Sholayemi Jeremy, amongst others. The late Joseph Adolo Okotie-Eboh Memorial Foundation ends with the national anthem that buttresses the point for all to hear, that for peace and unity to reign, justice must be seen to be done. Gimba Umar, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro tests positive for COVID-19. Plus more stories from our London studio in Around the World in 5. Please stay with us. Welcome back. The Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has tested positive for coronavirus. He revealed it to reporters, telling them he was in good health despite running a fever and that he's been taking hydroxychloroquine. Mr. Bolsonaro has repeatedly played down the risks posed by the virus, calling it a little flu. The United States has in the meantime begun the process of formally withdrawing from the World Health Organization. Here's Simon Pusey with more and Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. 5 million residents of the Australian city of Melbourne have been told to stay at home for 6 weeks amid a surge in coronavirus cases.
We've got no choice.
Victoria State Premier Daniel Andrews announced the lockdown after the state saw 191 new infections, its highest daily number since the pandemic began. Australia has recorded almost 9,000 cases and 106 deaths from the virus, but almost all new cases have been in Victoria.
The public health team have advised me to reimpose stage 3 stay-at-home restrictions, staying at home except for the 4 reasons to leave, effective from midnight tomorrow night for a period of 6 weeks. There is simply no alternative other than thousands and thousands of cases and potentially more, many, many people in hospital and the inevitable tragedy that will come from that.
The short-form video app TikTok has said it will exit the Hong Kong market within days following China's establishment of a new national security law in the city.
A ban on Chinese social media apps, especially TikTok.
The US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has also said the United States is certainly looking at banning Chinese social media apps, including TikTok, which is owned by Chinese-based ByteDance. The company, now run by the former Walt Disney executive Kevin Mayer, has said that the app's user data is not stored in China. A blast from a fuel truck in northern Colombia has left at least 7 people dead and more than 50 injured. The truck overturned on a road near the city of Barranquilla. After the crash, a group of local residents gathered around the tanker to try and fill up gas when it exploded and left several people burned. Colombia's President Ivan Duque has sent a message of solidarity to the families of the victims. In the southern Chinese province of Guizhou, 21 people have died and 15 people have been injured after a city bus they were travelling on crashed into a reservoir. The bus was carrying students who were on their way to sit their college entry exams. The accident comes days after torrential rain which triggered flood warnings across large parts of the country. The floods have turned out to be the heaviest witnessed in the country over the past 50 years, that's according to local authorities. Japan has also experienced heavy rain, with more expected to come this week on the southwestern island of Kyushu, as the death toll has reached at least 50, with about a dozen people reported missing. The government said it would double rescue and relief personnel as heavy rain destroyed homes and caused landslides in what is shaping up to be Japan's worst natural disaster since Typhoon Hagibis killed 90 people in October. Turkish police have detained 276 migrants on a cargo ship docked on the Aegean coast and have captured 8 people trying to smuggle them out of the country. The Turkish ship's activities had been monitored for a long time, and migrants were seen boarding the vessel in western Turkey's Izmir province on Monday evening. The migrants were from countries including Syria, Iran, Afghanistan, Bangladesh and Somalia. Meanwhile, in Cameroon, the activist Andre Blaise Esama has said he wants to purge his country of monuments celebrating French colonial past and replace them with local heroes. Esama's calls began long before the current global protests sparked by the death of George Floyd, and he is gradually gaining support. He has created an association that included several artists who have sculpted over 30 statues and other works of art celebrating Cameroon heroes. Britain's Prince Harry and his wife Meghan have spoken about race and equal rights to young leaders on a video call with the Queen's Commonwealth Trust.
When you look across the Commonwealth,
Although Prince Harry and Meghan stepped down as senior working royals earlier this year, they have kept their roles with the Voluntary Political Association, which has been hosting weekly calls on the various forms of injustice on the experiences of young people in response to the Black Lives Matter movement.
We have to, in this moment in time, say, we're going to have to be a little uncomfortable right now, because it's only in pushing through that discomfort that we get to the other side of this and find the place, as you're pointing out, where a high tide raises all ships. Equality does not put anyone on the back foot. It puts us all on the same footing, which is a fundamental human right. And that's what we're talking about here.
And finally, poppies, daisies and flowers have burst into flower for the Fioritura, or the natural flower show near the Italian village of Castelluccio. Although the natural event happens every year, sometimes it is more colourful than others, depending on the amount of rain that has fallen. This year, the colours have been particularly vivid. Next to the field, a mural made entirely of multicoloured lentils honoured medical workers and victims of the country's COVID-19 outbreak. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks a lot, Simon. Let's take a look at some sports now. And here's Jeffrey who's on.
Thanks, Ijoma. Let's begin with tennis, where Rafael Nadal is highly unlikely to defend his U.S. Open title when the rescheduled Grand Slam tournament begins on August the 31st. After confirming that he will play in the Madrid Masters, which starts the day after the final in New York. The Madrid and Rome Masters are the key warm-up clay tournaments before the French Open, where the Spaniard won 12 of his 19 majors. Nadal and world number 1 Novak Djokovic are among many contenders for the U.S. title, have expressed reservations about playing in New York during the COVID-19 pandemic. Chelsea further strengthened their position in the English Premier League's top 4 with a 3-2 victory over Crystal Palace in an entertaining encounter at Selhurst Park. Goals from Olivier Giroud, Christian Pulisic and Tammy Abraham gave Frank Lampard's sides a much-needed victory. Elsewhere, Danny Welbeck scored the winner with a spectacular overhead kick as Watford came from behind to beat Norwich City 2-1 and moved 4 points clear of the relegation zone. In the last game of the day, Leicester City and Arsenal played 1-1 draw at the King Power Stadium. Jurgen Klopp believes tomorrow's trip to Brighton will further test Liverpool's ability to adapt and solve issues on the pitch in real time. Klopp is unsure exactly how Graham Potter will set out his Brighton side as they seek more points to guarantee safety. The Reds travel to the Amex Stadium for another Premier League fixture with the side in the bottom half of the table before following the victory over Aston Villa over the weekend. The Nigerian Curling Federation is bracing up for the return of sporting activities on ice in October, which has been halted owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. The president of the federation, Damola Daniel, says Nigeria's curlers will be setting another record on ice when the 4 home-based female curlers will be representing the country for the first time at the Pacific Asia Curling Championships in Japan on October the 31st through November the 6th. And that's it on sports. It's back to you, Ijoma.
Thanks a lot, Jeffrey. And the main news again. The presidency today said no officer is above the law. This is coming as the presidential panel probing EFCC acting chairman Ibrahim Magu continued its sitting in the nation's capital, Abuja. Also today, the National Assembly demanded stiffer penalties for rapists as the Senate passed a bill on sexual harassment in tertiary institutions. The bill recommends, among other things, a 14-year jail term for offenders. And Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro today tested positive for COVID-19, just as the U.S. begins formal withdrawal from the World Health Organization. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Do stay safe out there, and good night.